The episcopal see of Carthage, the city restored to importance by Julius Caesar and Augustus, in which Christianity was firmly established by the 2nd century, was the most important in the whole of Roman Africa and continued as a residential see even after it had fallen to the Muslim conquest, until the start of the 2nd millennium. Earliest bishops. In Christian traditions, some accounts give as the first bishop of Carthage Crescens, ordained by St. Peter or Spiratus, one of the Cilician martyrs. Epictetus of Carthage is found in Pseudo-Dorotheus and Pseudo-Hippolytus lists of 70 disciples. The account of the martyrdom of St. Perpetua and her companions in 203 mentions an Optatus who is generally taken to have been Bishop of Carthage, but who may instead have been Bishop of Thuburbo-Minus. The first certain historically documented Bishop of Carthage is Agrippinus of the late 2nd century. Also historically certain is Donatus, the immediate predecessor of Cyprien. Primacy. In the 3rd century, at the time of Cyprien, the bishops of Carthage exercised a real though not formalized primacy in the early African Church, not only in the Roman province of proconsular Africa in the broadest sense, but also in some suprametropolitan form, over the Church in Numidia and Mauritania. The provincial primacy was associated with the senior bishop in the province rather than with a particular see and was of little importance in comparison to the authority of the Bishop of Carthage, who could be appealed to directly by the clergy of any province. Division. Cyprien faced opposition within his own diocese over the question of the proper treatment of the Lapsi who had fallen away from the Christian faith. Under persecution, Donatism became a serious problem in the 4th century and was not got rid of even through the Conference of Carthage of 411, which decided in favor of the Catholic side. Successors of Cyprien until before the Vandal invasion. The immediate successors of Cyprien were Lucianus and Carpophorus, but there is disagreement about which of the two was earlier. A bishop's Aries, mentioned in a lost work by Augustine, is placed by some before, by others after, the time of Cyprien. There is greater certainty about the 4th century bishops. Mencius, bishop by 303, succeeded in 311 by Caecilianus, who was at the First Council of Nicaea and who was opposed by the Donatist bishop Majorinus. Rufus participated in an anti-Arian council held in Rome in 337 of 340 under Pope Julius I. He was opposed by Donatus Magnus, the true founder of Donatism. Gratus was at the Council of Sardica and presided over a council at Carthage in 349. He was opposed by Donatus Magnus and, after his exile and death, by Parmenianus, whom the Donatists chose as his successor. Restitutus accepted the Arian formula at the Council of Rimini in 359 but later repented. Genethlius presided over 2 councils at Carthage, the second of which was held in 390. The next bishop was St. Aurelius, who in 421 presided over another council at Carthage and was still alive in 426. His Donatist opponent was Promianus, who had succeeded Parmenianus in about 391. Bishops under the Vandals. Capriola was bishop of Carthage when the Vandals conquered the province. Unable for that reason to attend the Council of Ephesus in 431 as chief bishop of Africa, he sent his deacon Basula to represent him. In about 437 he was succeeded by Quadvultius, whom Genseric exiled and who died in Naples. A 15-year vacancy followed, and it was only in 4 454 that St. Deogratius was ordained Bishop of Carthage. He died at the end of 457 of the beginning of 458, and Carthage remained without a bishop for another 24 years. St. Eugenius was consecrated in around 481, exiled, along with other Catholic bishops, by Hun Eric in 484, recalled in 487, but in 491 forced to flee to Albi in Gaul, where he died. When the Vandal persecution ended in 523, Bonifacius became Bishop of Carthage and held a council in 525. Praetorian Prefecture of Africa. The Eastern Roman Empire established its Praetorian Prefecture of Africa after the reconquest of northwestern Africa during the Vandalic War, 533 to 534. Bonifacius was succeeded by Reparatus, who held firm in the Three Chapters controversy and in 551 was exiled to Pontus, where he died. He was replaced by Primosus, who accepted the emperor's wishes on the controversy. He was represented at the Second Council of Constantinople in 553 by the Bishop of Tunis. Publianus was Bishop of Carthage from before 566 to after 581. Dominicus is mentioned in letters of Pope Gregory the Great between 592 and 601. Fortunius lived at the time of Pope Theodore I and went to Constantinople in the time of Patriarch Paul II of Constantinople. Victor became Bishop of Carthage in 646. Last resident bishops. At the beginning of the 8th century and at the end of the 9th, Carthage still appears in lists of dioceses over which the Patriarch of Alexandria claimed jurisdiction. Two letters of Pope Leo IX on the 27th of December 1053 show that the Diocese of Carthage was still a residential see. The texts are given in the Patrologia Latina of Minia. They were written in reply to consultations regarding a conflict between the bishops of Carthage and Gumi about who was to be considered the metropolitan, with the right to convoke a synod. In each of the two letters, the Pope laments that, while in the past Carthage had had a church council of 205 bishops, the number of bishops in the whole territory of Africa was now reduced to 5, and that, even among those 5, there was jealousy and contention. However, he congratulated the bishops to whom he wrote for submitting the question to the Bishop of Rome, whose consent was required for a definitive decision. The first of the two letters is addressed to Thomas, Bishop of Africa, whom messengers deduces to have been the Bishop of Carthage. The other letter is addressed to Bishops Petrus and Ioann, whose sees are not mentioned, and whom the Pope congratulates for having supported the rights of the See of Carthage. In each of the two letters, Pope Leo declares that, after the Bishop of Rome, the first Archbishop and chief metropolitan of the whole of Africa is the Bishop of Carthage, while the Bishop of Gumi, whatever his dignity or power, will act, except for what concerns his own diocese, like the other African bishops, by consultation with the Archbishop of Carthage. In the letter addressed to Petrus and Ioann, Pope Leo adds to his declaration of the position of the Bishop of Carthage the eloquent declaration, "Nor can he, for the benefit of any bishop in the whole of Africa, lose the privilege received once for all from the Holy Roman and Apostolic See, but he will hold it until the end of the world as long as the name of our Lord Jesus Christ is invoked there, whether Carthage lie desolate or whether it some day rise glorious again." When in the 19th century the residential see of Carthage was for a while restored, Cardinal Charles Marshal Ali command, Laveri had these words inscribed in letters of gold beneath the dome of his great cathedral. The building now belongs to the Tunisian state and is used for concerts. Later, an archbishop of Carthage named Cyriacus was imprisoned by the Arab rulers because of an accusation by some Christians. Pope Gregory VII wrote him a letter of consolation, repeating the hopeful assurances of the primacy of the Church of Carthage. Whether the Church of Carthage should still lie desolate or rise again in glory. By 1076, Cyriacus was set free, but there was only one other bishop in the province. These are the last of whom there is mention in that period of the history of the See. Restoration. In 1684, Pope Urban VIII established an apostolic prefecture at Tunis for Ottoman Tunisia, which Pope Gregory XVI raised to the rank of an apostolic vicariate in 1843. In 1881, Tunisia became a French protectorate, and in the same year Charles Laveri, who was Archbishop of Algiers, became apostolic administrator of the Vicariate of Tunis. In the following year, Laveri became a cardinal. He saw himself as the reviver of the ancient Christian Church of Africa, the Church of Cyprien of Carthage, and, on the 10th of November 1884, was successful in his great ambition of having the Metropolitan See of Carthage restored, with himself as its first archbishop. In line with the declaration of Pope Leo IX in 1053, Pope Leo XIII acknowledged the revived Archdiocese of Carthage as the primatial See of Africa and Laveri as primate. For then until 1964, the Annuario Pontifico presented the See of Carthage as founded in the 3rd century. Metropolitan See of Proconsularize as Ugatarana, restored as Archbishopric the 10th of November 1884. Modern Tunisia. In July 1964, pressure from President Habib Bourguiba's government of the Republic of Tunisia, which was in a position to close down all the Catholic churches in the country, forced the Holy See to abide by a modus vivendi bilateral agreement which regulated its legal status according to the 1959 Constitution of Tunisia. The modus vivendi gave the Catholic Church in Tunisia legal personality and stated that it was legally represented by the Prelate Nullus of Tunis. The Holy See chose the Prelate Nullus, but the government could object against the candidate before an appointment. The modus vivendi banned the Catholic Church from any political activity in Tunisia. This particular agreement was unofficially described as Instad modus non moriendi by all but 5 of the country's more than 70 churches were handed over to the state, including what had been the cathedral of the archdiocese, while the state, for its part, promised that the buildings would be put only to use of public interest consonant with the previous function. Pope Paul VI suppressed the Archdiocese of Carthage and erected the Prelature Nullus of Tunis. In his 1964 Apostolic Constitution Prudens Ecclesiae, to conform to the bilateral agreement, the Archdiocese of Carthage reverted to the status of a titular see. The first Archbishop of the titular see, Agostino Casaroli, was appointed on 4 July 1967. The Annuario Pontifico of that period described the titular Archiepiscopal See of Carthage as founded in the 3rd century. Metropolitan See of Proconsularize as Ugatarana, restored as an Archiepiscopal See on 10 November 1884. Titular Archbishopric 9 July 1964. The history of the territorial prelature was given as founded 9 July 1964. Previously an archbishopric under the name of Carthage, founded 10 November 1884. The prelature was elevated to an exempt diocese, directly subject to the Holy See, in 1995. In 2010, it was promoted to an exempt archdiocese. The summary of the history of the residential Archdiocese of Tunis now given in the Annuario Pontificio is: Archbishopric under the name of Carthage, the 10th of November 1884, Prelature of Tunis the 9th of July 1964, Diocese the 31st of May 1995, Archbishopric the 22nd of May 2010. The ancient See of Carthage, on the other hand, being no longer a residential bishopric, is listed by the Catholic Church as a titular see in the same publication as distinct from the modern See of Tunis. As a summary history of the titular See of Carthage it states: founded in the 3rd century, Metropolitan See of Proconsularize Zugatarana, restored as an archiepiscopal see on the 10th of November 1884, titular Metropolitan See the 9th of July 1964. The Cathedral of St. Vincent de Paul is the cathedral of the Archdiocese of Tunis. What was the Cathedral of the Archdiocese of Carthage? The St. Louis Cathedral is owned by the Tunisian state and is used for concerts,